Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. My name is Yasmin Davila, and I am from 2 Octobers. We're a digital marketing agency based out of Denver, Colorado, in the United States. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from today. Really what I wanted to talk about today was how to craft an audience-driven SEO content strategy. And what I mean by that is, really the term content marketing is such a buzzword, and there's a lot of questions around, well, where do I get started? How do I approach it? It's such a vast space, and how do I really start to dive into that and make sure that the content that I'm producing is going to resonate with my audience. And so before we get started here, I did want to say, so this is kind of an abbreviated version. I will be doing a extended version of this session in a few months in September. So I'll have information for that at the end. So if you enjoy the content that I share today and want to learn more, please do keep that in mind, and I'll have information how to join that session as well. But before we get started, just a little bit more about me. So again, I'm from 2 Octobers. I'm a senior SEO manager there, focused on content strategy. I have about 14 years of experience in SEO and content, both on the agency and in-house side, with experience ranging from enterprise and localized SEO and content for companies like Dish Network, Choice Hotels International, and other retail, finance, and hospitality companies. So really a wide variety of experience. And most recently, I've really tapped into the content side, as that's really the area that I'm passionate about. And I think there's so much opportunity there for growth as SEO continues to evolve. So today, what we're going to focus on is, really just starting off with what is effective content and why does it matter? How do we define content hubs, and then how do we start to build those out? And then just some top tips and takeaways for you to take with you today if you're looking to get started on a content plan and strategy. So first, just to set some groundwork here. So really, how do we define what is effective content and why does it matter? So if we're looking at content, traditionally, way back when SEO was just kind of getting started, and even, beyond that, it was really more about, targeting keywords and looking at which keywords have the most search volume, how frequently we can incorporate those keywords within the content. Well, now effective content has really evolved beyond that. So we do need to focus on addressing the search engine needs, of course, but beyond that, it really is about addressing consumer needs. And that's really what Google and the search engines have evolved to look at is this content meeting the needs of my consumers that I'm trying to target? Am I addressing their pain points and their main questions? And so the graphic here really illustrates that well. And where you really want your content to be is sort of in that middle sector, where you're addressing your consumer pain points. You're also targeting those keywords from an SEO perspective. And then likewise, even within that, there's some industries that are so competitive and just so oversaturated with content. It's difficult to go after every single topic because you don't want to go in and start to boil the ocean, so to speak. So really make sure that you're addressing the niche or area of expertise that your business really focuses on. What's your unique value proposition? What makes you stand out? And how do you really develop content around that that's going to get you the right audience? And so the combination of all of these things, then you're able to not only benefit search traffic and establish authority, but you're also then catering to your consumers, which is really the key component when it comes to trying to rank and build traction around that content and increase your traffic. And so why does all of this matter? So you may be asking, okay, that's great, but how do I start to measure this as pertains to my business? And how is this going to benefit me as an organization? So there's a lot of different ways that this has a positive business impact, everything from increased brand awareness, right? So if you have the right content out there, you're able to reach a broader audience and get more eyes on your website. Increased engagement. So if you are maybe looking at customer retention or even just trying to keep new users on your site longer, if the content is relevant and resonates with that audience, you'll have that increased level of engagement. Again, I mentioned improved customer retention. It's a lot of the focus is often on, getting new traffic to the site, but there's also those existing customers that we want to make sure continue to be satisfied with the content that we're presenting, regardless of what industry that we're in. Also higher lead quality and quantity. So, by kind of qualifying the content that you're producing and having a thought process behind that and making sure that it is matching your business and your needs and goals, you'll have the right type of traffic coming. So not only will you have more of it, but it'll be qualified because you've already taken the time to establish that strategy. Along with that, you'll see increased sales. So the thought is, if you have that qualified traffic coming to your site, you're able to convert them at a higher rate. And then with that comes improved competitive positioning. So of course, if you are developing content around the topics and keywords and things that you are targeting and really having a plan to produce that type of content and get that traffic, that will give you an increased visibility versus your competitors, even those that you may not necessarily have on your radar at this point. So now that we've kind of talked about, okay, what makes effective content and why does it matter? How do you start to define, what these content hubs look like? And I'll get into what I mean by a content hub in just a moment. But really what I'd like to narrow it down to is 4 critical steps. So there's obviously quite a lot that goes into developing content, but I think this is a great format to follow to help you as you're sort of looking for a guide in terms of content production. So the first thing, which I kind of alluded to, was identifying business goals. And then you'll get into reviewing your analytics, researching FAQs, and then assessing search trends. And what we'll do here is dive into each of these just a little bit further to give you some more insight as to what each of these entails. So this may seem like an obvious notion to a lot of people, but identifying business goals is really where you want to start. And again, this is just to help you to define, the immediate and long-term content plans, as well as specifically what areas that you're going to focus on. So by defining that, really looking at, okay, what are my top 2 to 3 goals? Is that to promote a new product? Am I trying to increase my subscriptions to, subscription service that I offer, or am I looking to increase customer retention, or am I really focused on, non-brand content for these specific types of topics? Really just taking a look at, even beyond just digital, what are your overarching business goals? And then making sure that the content that you are creating and defining is in support of those specific goals. That's going to be really important just because you don't want to just blindly start creating all these haphazard pages or content across the site. It should roll up to this sort of North Star that you have that will help, again, to guide short and long-term plans. So once you've done that, a great place to start, because a lot of people will come to me and say, well, okay, that's really great, but I have no idea where to get started on this. And a great place to start is really just taking a look under the hood of your own analytics. A great resource for this, in addition to GA or Adobe or any analytics tool that you're using, is Search Console. Because of course, a lot of the traditional analytics tools are no longer providing keyword level data. This is a good place to get a sense of what keywords are already performing well and maybe where you can sort of start to identify immediate and long-term opportunities again. So these are a couple of snapshots. On the left-hand side here, you can see your performance report that is directly from Search Console. Typically, what I recommend is exporting at least 12 months or as many months of data as you have available to get a good sampling of your data, and then exporting that into a spreadsheet or a Google sheet similar to what you see at the right here, where you'll have your clicks, impressions, click-through rate, and position. And you can see here in this particular example, I've applied some conditional formatting so I can quickly see, okay, red, I'm kind of ranking really beyond the first few pages. Within green, I'm ranking in the top few positions. So those are clearly doing well. And yellow, I'm sort of maybe on the cusp of ranking well, but not quite there. And on the bottom here are some good formulas and good guidelines for you just to see, in terms of, again, quick and long-term ones that you can look at. So for example, if you have a keyword where maybe you're getting a ton of impressions, so you have great visibility for that, you're also ranking really well, but your click-through rate is low, and low can vary, of course, depending on the website. Generally, I would say anything under 3% I would consider a low click-through rate. So if you have a combination of those factors, that could be something where maybe you just want to go through and look at optimizing those titles and meta descriptions. It seems like, again, something very fundamental, but again, if we're looking at crafting content to really cater to our audience, perhaps there's something else that they're looking to see in that. Maybe it's a free shipping call out. Maybe it's, if you are some type of food service provider or restaurant or offer food products, maybe calling out different flavors or things like that, specific product names. Taking a look at, other things that you can call out within the title and meta. And a good way to do that is just taking a scan of the search results to see perhaps, what others are doing who are ranking well for those keywords that seem to be performing well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too further in the presentation. But those are a great place to start because you already have the content set up and you're basically already doing well in terms of visibility. You just need a little bit of massaging of the content to really help that click-through rate. So I always like to call that as a good sort of place to get started on content strategy. If we're looking to go to the next step, so perhaps you have a keyword where you're having a ton of impressions, but your rank is not that great. So maybe beyond page 2, over 20, you have a lower click-through rate, so under that 3% threshold, or very minimal. That would be a situation where you want to look at those keywords. And again, if they align with sort of where your business goals are, that would be something where perhaps you're going to look to add some content. And typically what I recommend starting with is looking at what page is ranking the best for that keyword, and then start to add content to that page. And the reason being just because if you're already getting some traction on that page, it may just need some further development to help it to perform better. Beyond that, it may require a more comprehensive content plan where you're needing to add some additional pages and add some internal linking around those and really building out more of these hubs that we'll talk about a little bit more. But this is a great place, again, within Search Console to get started on formulating your strategy. So beyond looking at analytics, looking at things like Search Console and your internal GA or Adobe or anything like that, the next component is looking at FAQs. And this is a really critical component because this is where you're going to really see what things are important to your consumers or your target audience around particular topics. So one tool that I love, and again, there's so many different tools available, so this is by no means the only one, but this one is a free tool that is accessible to anybody, and it's answerthepublic.com. This is a great resource where you can enter in, you can see here I have the example that I'll use throughout the presentation, but for running shoes. And so you'll see here at the right, essentially what this does is produce a list of common questions for, are, when, who, things like that. And let you know types of things that people are looking for around that query. And the great part about it too is you can look by country. Of course, people will look for things differently depending on their location. So it's great to be able to filter that way as well. But I love to use this, and then you're able to export this data. And you can see here what I did is start to categorize some of these questions. So, people are looking for, are running shoes good? And it looks like they're looking at a particular purpose around those keywords. So I just highlighted a few, they're looking at, things like walking or hiking, or can I use these for the gym or for training and things like that. And what you want to start to do is, as you're going through all of the topics that you're thinking about maybe creating content for, is categorizing and identifying patterns. So you want to see if there's a pattern that's really prevalent, that really stands out, where perhaps you can create some content around that. Perhaps you don't have any content, or maybe you have a little bit of content, but it needs to be built out. This is a great way, this and other tools like it, to get a sense of what people are looking for and what's important to them. Now, coupled with that, the other component is, of course, catering to your audience, but also tying in the SEO piece. And so, while keyword saturation is not something that is as much of a focus as is the type of content and what you're speaking about on the page, looking at the search volume for keywords is still really great directional information because it is still a component that you want to be incorporating throughout, things like your title tag, your H1, your H2s, your headers, and then subtly throughout the copy, a few mentions depending on how long the copy is. So once you've researched your FAQs, you want to take a look at what corresponding keywords really go with that. So you can see here, I did some keyword research around that, looking at training and running shoes, since that was one of the FAQs that came up. And what I'm able to do is pull, all of the sort of same category or same theme keywords and get a total cumulative search volume. So over 5,000 searches a month for just the keywords that I pulled here. So what that to me indicates is, okay, that's a great opportunity. There's a good amount of search volume there where it could warrant having some content that's maybe comparative around training and running shoes, or answering specific questions that people have around that specific use. So this to me would substantiate creating at least one page and maybe more page around those particular topics. Now, the other piece to that is you want to take a look at, where might those keywords fit within the sales funnel, because that will help to define what type of content that you're creating. So if I'm looking at something like, what are the differences between running and training shoes? Maybe I want to have a blog piece that really gets into the weeds about, what are those main differences? How are each of them used? What are similarities? What are overlap? Or maybe I want to have, a comparison grid on a product page that's kind of outlining the highlights, or talking about cross use and things like that. So depending on, what the keywords look like, start to think about, are those top of funnel? Are those more consideration or mid funnel where people are more kind of researching? Or are those decision where it seems like they're pretty much ready to make a decision, and that might make sense more for something like a product page. So using those things in tandem is great to help you start to define what that will look like on your website. Along with that, another great tool is Google Trends. So you've looked at your FAQ, you've got a sense for what questions people are looking at, you understand generally what the average search volume is in correlation with those common questions. Now you want to look at, okay, what is the overall demand over time? And so Google Trends is good, again, directional data. There's some numbers associated with it. I wouldn't get too hung up on those, as just opposed to the general trend line, and then the topics and queries that come back from that. And so this is good because you can sort of see if things are more seasonal, just depending on how that trend line looks, or if there's consistent demand over time that would make more sense for some evergreen content. The other great part, like I mentioned, is it will provide you some related topics and related queries. And what you can do is also see maybe some other popular related topics and start to categorize those as well. So you can see here what I did is sort of group these. So under related topics, there's some different terminology. So maybe I want to consider my use of the word shoe versus sneaker throughout the site, and find ways to incorporate, maybe one or both of those if it makes sense. There's some particular brands that are being called out. So, if I'm a retailer that offers multiple brands, I perhaps want to make sure that I certainly have a page dedicated to Nike and to Brooks, and, talking about training and running shoes. On the right side is related queries. One that stood out to me was best. So this is a great opportunity. Again, depending on the type of business you are, you could have a best of list, maybe of your own products, or if you're more of a third party, best of, top running shoes, or top multi-use running shoes, or something like that. So again, this is really great directional information to give you a sense of things that are trending over time, just to help support a lot of that data that you've already pulled from the steps before. So once you've got to that point and really defined, okay, I think I have a sense of what topics make sense to go after now, both from an audience perspective, and they also have the support from a search engine perspective, how do you start to build those out? So I've really broken those up into 3 key steps. There's a lot that goes into each of these, of course, but the first one, really starting off by assessing your competition and the overall search landscape, and then organizing those content hubs, and then of course, actually going through the process of producing that content. So one of the key components is going through and assessing your competition. Now, this can seem like a daunting task, but there's actually some, easy, although of course, pretty time-intensive ways to look at this. But the first one is just taking a look at search results. So here's an example for training shoes versus running shoes. And what you want to do in this situation is just get a sense for what the search results look like overall. And this piece really could just take you a couple of minutes just to see, okay, what types of information is actually returning for this topic. So you can see here in this particular example, I'm getting a featured snippet. And if I'm looking closely at that featured snippet, it's a guide that's pretty comprehensive going through running shoes and addressing a lot of the frequently asked questions that consumers have around that. And so Google has deemed that that is an important piece of content that is closely tied to that query and resonates. So that's probably a page that I want to explore further and see what they are doing on that page that I can do better on my own site. Another great place to see, which tends to return in, gosh, most search results these days, is people also ask. So you can see there a sampling of questions that people are frequently asking that are related to that topic. And this is great because it can really support a lot of the FAQ research you've already done from a tool like Answer the Public or otherwise. And then you can get a sense of if you're including, maybe an FAQ style format content or just any type of content on the page, these are questions that you probably should be directly addressing on the page in order to gain favor with the search engines and just really tie into what people are interested in finding about. Because of course, something like running shoes is a pretty general topic, and you could write forever and lots of pages, but this really helps you to refine things that people really care about and things that will help you rank well. So once you have a general assessment of what the search landscape looks like, you can start to dive in a little bit more detailed. And so from there, doing a little bit more specific searches or, searching for other related topics and seeing, who's ranking well and what are they actually doing to achieve that ranking. So within this example here, I've looked at just a very broad topic, running shoes again. And I just pointed out here, I noticed that Nike is ranking very well on the general organic search. So you can see they're in the top, 3 for the normal or regular organic results, but they're also highlighted there and a people also ask. So they have multiple placements in organic. So it seems that Google really likes the way that this content is structured and the content that is presented on this page. And so if you dive into the page, you can get a lot of really great insights that you can perhaps apply to the pages as you're trying to build out new content, or maybe you're looking at, recreating some of the templates you already have or site redesigns. You can sort of see, some of the key things that maybe these other competitors or other websites that are ranking well, things that they're actually doing. So for their running shoes page or the page that's ranking prominently, you can see here that they've actually have the target topic phrase included in 2 of their primary headers, including the H1 and H2, which I've outlined here. The H2 is supported with that FAQ style content. So you can see they've got some actual questions like what elements create great running shoes, which running shoes are best for you. They're really pulling from questions that were identified within Answer the Public or tools such as that, as well as people also ask, and they have some pretty detailed content directly on this category page that's tying into that. So this is a great example of where you could say, okay, maybe I look at a few other competitor pages, I see some similar trends, and then I know that I should probably structure my content similarly, but of course do it better so that my page is favored in a similar fashion. And once you've done some of that research and you've got all these topics that you're identifying, this is where you really want to start to build out these hubs. And so I alluded to this earlier, but really the way that your content starts to perform well is when you start to associate it together and start to establish authority around these topics. And this is the way that you do that. You really have your primary keyword or your primary topic that you're going after. So if that is, that's your central piece here, you're going to have subtopics or related pages that are going to link to that main page or that main topic. So the thought is that that primary topic is going to be a higher volume or broader keyword, and then you're going to use some longer tailed or related topics and keywords that will link to that. And what that helps you to do is you're able to target some of these more competitive keywords, competitive topics that are, it's more difficult to obtain that visibility. But by tapping into whatever your unique value proposition is, whatever your niche is, and some of these longer tailed topics and keywords, you can start to still build authority around those broader topics by tapping into those others. And the internal linking component is very critical here as well, because that really helps to establish that association, not only for Google, but for your users as well. As they're on these different pages, you really help to guide their path around similar content. And that's also something that resonates with Google, and just helps to establish that authority. So the way that that would look in context of the running shoes example, just to give you a more clear example here. So this is just one instance that you could set it up. So for instance, your primary keyword or your running shoes would be your hub. That could be a primary e-commerce category page, for example. And then you would have these supporting e-commerce pages or blog pages around it that all link to this hub page, and perhaps also to each other. I think, the one thing is, be thoughtful about your internal linking and make sure that you're not just putting in a bunch of links just for the sake of doing it. But, thinking about, okay, does it make sense to naturally include one here? Maybe I do want to link to, this other page from this blog page, and that makes sense. Those are things that you want to be incorporating. But here's an example where you may have a few e-commerce pages around, again, training versus running shoes, or maybe walking versus running shoes, and then trail running shoes. So perhaps you decide that those are the product focused pages you want to have. And then maybe you've got some blog pages around some other FAQs, like how do I clean and care for my running shoes, or how to choose the right fit. So I get the question a lot of, okay, what's the way that I should do this? Is this, the exact structure I need to follow? And the answer is there's not really a certain right way to do it. You just want to make sure that the way you're organizing your hubs is in a fashion that makes sense for search engines, but also for your users. And, it seems, again, obvious, but I always put myself in the shoes of my audience or my consumer, and thinking about, okay, if I came to this page, what would I be expecting to see? And what would make it easy for me to navigate and to make a decision on a purchase here. So really try to take that mindset as you're building out these hubs. But again, very critical to, as you're mapping things out, think about how these will all relate, and then make sure that you have that internal linking component. And a great way to do that is, before you just go and start writing and producing all this content, make sure that you create a content calendar. And again, that can be any format that you want. This is just an example here that I've put from a Google Sheet. But this really helps you to see, you can see here, comparisons, maybe one topic in terms of running shoe comparisons, care and maintenance, maybe another topic I decide, and then selection. So choosing, the best style, the best fit. Maybe those are the topics that I decide are the sort of broader topics I want to go after. And the reason why this is great is because this really is doing the work of organizing those hubs that we just reviewed. And then you can make sure that as you're producing this content and creating these subtopic pages, that you have substantial content rolling up into each of these hub pages to support that topic. So this is a great way to keep track of that. Of course, it's a way for you to provide that direction to your writer, to give updates to anyone internally, to keep track of all the content, because as you continue to go forward, of course, these are going to grow, and you don't want to lose track of the content you've already produced, and make sure that you're being really thoughtful about what you're producing next. So content calendar is absolutely essential for organizing that. And then as you're going through and creating the content itself, keep in mind a lot of those insights that you garnered from looking at the search results, diving into the competitor pages themselves, of course, conducting that keyword research. There's other tools like this one here, LSI Graph, where you can pull related keywords that you can incorporate throughout the copy. Again, from my stance and what I've seen to perform well is, yes, some keyword incorporation is important, but really think more about how you are catering to your audience and answering their questions and their pain points and their needs. And then all of that stuff is secondary and really roll into that. But by really tapping into your audience desires first, that is what's going to help you to succeed and perform well. So I know we have a couple minutes here, but just wanted to sort of recap a lot of information, of course. And so just some top tips for you to take away today. So again, it's really critical that you start off by confirming your business priorities and goals. Any content that you're creating should be in support of those, just to help you to stay on track with what you're trying to accomplish. The second tip is using the analytics data that you already have available via Search Console or whatever analytics platform that you're on, so that you can uncover quick wins like updating those metas and titles. And then longer term projects like where you may need to add content to a page or create new pages altogether. Thirdly is researching those FAQs to make sure that you're using content to address consumer pain points, and then using trend data to support those ideas. And then after that, assessing your competition, as we took a look at, reviewing the search results, taking a look at who has the most visibility, and then how can you produce that content, but only better, and really, just taking some of the key takeaways from those pages, but making an even better page. And then organizing your content around those hubs, making sure that you're linking related pieces. And then finally, keeping track of and producing a content calendar that's really housing all of your hubs, all of your subtopics, and really helping you with that development. And then making sure you're producing that well-optimized content. So with that, like I mentioned, just to quickly wrap up here, I actually will be doing an extended session of this because, of course, I could talk all day about content, but we only have half an hour today. So I'll probably be doing about an hour and a half session in September on the 17th. If you want to find out more about that, you can visit the 2 October's website. We also have quite a few other webinars and sessions coming up that are related to content and otherwise that I think you would all really much enjoy. And of course, there is my contact information too. Please do feel free to email me or reach out to me on LinkedIn if you have any further questions that we're not able to get to today. But otherwise, I hope this was helpful and really appreciate all of your time.